Hello everyone and welcome to This Nintendo Life. My name is NBZ. This here is episode 99 of This Nintendo podcast, and we're coming up close on episode 100 because this is one episode away from it, of course. So we'll talk about that more at the end of the show. But before we get into things, and I even introduce my co-host up front, I just want to make another mention of the Discord that we started up last time. And we've got some more folks in there, a nice little group of people. But if you missed the link before or just didn't get to it or whatever, or thinking, oh, I don't know if I should do that, you should join. It's a fun time. There are some people in there having some fun chats. So go ahead and go to the link in the description of this podcast or to our Twitter account at TNL Podcast. It's still the pinned tweet at the top there, and of course in the YouTube description if you are on that platform. We try and accommodate everyone here. But let's get into things with talking to the other person on this podcast. Maybe. Hi Bally, how you doing?
Hi MBZ. I'm pumped about episode 100. Like, I cannot believe it's finally come around.
It's even bigger because we do a show every 2 weeks. So it took us a long time to get to episode 100. So yeah.
How long has it taken? We started
4 years.
In November 2013.
Mm-hmm.
And we're coming up to November 2017, I should say. That'll be 4 years then, won't it?
Yeah, essentially. So wow. Yeah, that's a lot of time. But we've done some good stuff here, and we've had fun. And we keep having fun, which is why I'm still here doing this goddamn podcast talking about video games. And Bally, there's a lot of video games happening right now. It's a lot of video games, and a lot of things to talk about.
I think, as they say on Giant Bomb, this is the best time to be playing video games.
Yes, 100%. I will echo Vinny Caravella till the end of time. There's no better time to be playing video games than now. It's just it's a cornucopia. It's just a goddamn feast for the gods. So let's start talking about them. Bally, you are, you're very selective in what you buy and play, so you haven't jumped on the latest crazes of the Mario and Rabbids and the Sonic Manias, but you have been dipping back into the backlog for a very special game that you've been waiting to play for a long time. Yes,
I actually picked this game up back when I was staying in London. I was with my friend Alex, and he said, "Oh, Bally, can you just get Advance Wars 2 and we can play the verses against each other? Like, they don't have that mode in the first one. You can do it in Advance Wars 2. I was like, I'm just going to buy a whole game just so we can play this multiplayer this one afternoon. And then I thought, well, I am going to play Advance Wars 2 eventually, so I might as well pick it up now. And that was about a good 1.5 to 2 years ago that I picked up this game, and it's just been sitting there on my Wii waiting to be played. Outrageous that I'd not played it until now, because I absolutely love Advance Wars, and anyone who's been listening to this show for all of a few episodes knows that. So it was time to jump in, and I did beat the entire game in this space since last episode, so it took me about 29 hours perhaps.
Sometimes people say, Bally, yeah man, you take so long to beat games, Bally, what are you doing? This MBZ fella, he keeps beating games left, right and centre, but you've shown, Bally, you have the capacity to beat games very quickly when you want to.
I got the chops. It just has to be the right game. It just has to be the right game. And
there is something about Advance Wars which really gets under your skin, I think, in the same way that Fire Emblem does for me, where there is this compulsion in you to just keep playing and just keep going, even if it is 2 a.m.
Exactly. I can do like a 2-3 hour mission, and then I'm like, right, I've beaten it. Time to do some more. And I'm exactly like you with Advance Wars when I'm playing Fire Emblem, where when I've beaten a meaty long mission and chapter in a campaign, I just have to say, right, I need a break. I need to do something else for a while and come back to it. Whereas, like you are with Fire Emblem, I'm like with Advance Wars, where it's just like, let's just plow in one campaign mission after the other. Let's just keep going, and that's how you beat these long games. So I eventually got there. Like I said, 29-hour game. It's a 25 mission campaign going across 5 different lands. So it's just generally so much longer, meatier, and a lot tougher than the first game. So in the first game, you fought the other lands. So you were playing as Orange Star, and you were playing against Blue Moon, Yellow Comet, and Green Earth. And you were unknown to the fact that Sturm, like the main bad guy who controls the Black Hole Army, he's
like the weird robot thing, right? That
yeah, he's like a Darth Vader clone, essentially.
Right, yes, yeah.
And he's like manipulating and tricking other armies that Orange Star are like the enemy, and that you have to like they all want to fight Orange Star, but by the end of that game you're like, oh, well, you aren't actually the enemy. Sturm's the enemy. And then so this game, it's all 4 lands fighting Sturm. So you basically play 4 mini campaigns. Well, they're not even mini. They're like long campaigns. They're like 4 campaigns, and then you go into the 5th land to fight Black Hole, like in Black Hole Rising or whatever it's called. So
is it split up into like 5 mission chunks then per army that you're controlling?
Yeah, there's approximately 4, 5, 6 missions, and it is optional how many you do. Like it's not completely linear, so you are able to pick between a few missions, and I think you may often have to beat maybe 2 out of 3 of the missions in order to progress. So, and they constantly repeat that. So I didn't do every single mission in the campaign because you don't have to. I wasn't quite mainlining. I was doing a bit of both.
I think that's somewhat similar to the first game, because I was looking up online about certain missions in Advance Wars 1, and you can take different paths depending on, I guess, the way you finish missions or stuff like that, like how successful you were on certain missions.
Yeah.
And it leads you down different... It is very similar to Fire Emblem, and I think, that makes sense because Intelligent Systems developed both these games. But in Fire Emblem, there are Gaiden chapters, which is like 16X or 17XB or whatever, and you, depending on very weird factors, you can unlock those or not, and, get extra missions, essentially.
Yeah, and this game, like, it's nice because it doesn't mean you're stuck in this one linear thing where you have to beat this mission before you can advance. Obviously, that happens numerous times, and there's sort of like a final campaign mission within each of the 4 worlds, and then you've got a couple more campaign missions, and then the final battle, which I'll talk about in a second. But what's cool is that there are just far more missions in this game where you're controlling multiple armies fighting Black Hole. So they did this in sort of like the final chapter of the last game, and I want to say maybe another couple of missions in the last game. But in this game, I'd say half to about a third of the missions, you're controlling multiple armies, which just gives you so much more scope. You're essentially running 2 economies against 1, so you really have to manage which cities you're going for, which factories you're building in, etc., how you're developing your bases, airports, you name it. So, like,
how much unit diversity is there between the factions? Because what I remember of Advance Wars 1 is like everyone kind of has the same units, but they have different CO powers that you can use, essentially.
So yeah, exactly. Everyone has exactly the same units, but there's like a guy who's a flying specialist. There's even a guy in this game who's like a helicopter specialist. So
that's very specific.
So his helicopter units are boosted, whereas I believe like his fighter jets are weakened. So you know that with him you only want to use your helicopters, and then it's combined with like he powers up certain ground units like the infantry and mech units. So it's really weird. Like he boosts a certain couple. And then you've got the more straightforward people like Andy. He's your main vanilla character, the main protagonist of the game. He just his powers repair units and boost their power for a turn. Like all units, regardless of whether they're land, sea, or air, all get boosted a little bit. So my favorite was actually Sammy, who gets boosted infantry and mech units, and with those boosted infantry and mech units you can capture cities, bases and airports and harbors far more easily, far faster, which I personally really liked. I think that this game, it's really good that it does all these extra armies, because I really enjoyed sort of picking from each batch of COs, because say you might have Blue Moon and Yellow Comet against Sturm or something. You can pick like your favorite Blue Moon CO and your favorite Yellow Comet CO and put them together and see what happens. And sort of, so different COs are used for different maps, obviously, and like it's really, they all have their advantages and disadvantages, and you have to pick what will work best for this scenario and this map. And that's a really important thing moving forward, where some COs just have a massive advantage compared to others. The thing about this game that makes it so much tougher, I believe, than the last game is that the last game was basically, here are your units, here are my units. I'm going to fight my units against your units. If I can outmaneuver your units, I'm going to win. If you can outmaneuver your units against me, you're going to win. this game throws in a lot of extra stuff. And I'm not going to say this stuff is bad. I just believe it makes the game harder. And I think to maybe someone who's not particularly advanced at Advance Wars will really struggle because there are... Sorry?
Me?
Yeah.
That's me you're describing?
No, I wasn't describing you, MZ, but basically there's just tons of lasers and cannons and just huge cannons that take up like a third of the entire stage. And to be fair, it can only fire one shot within that radius, and the smaller cannons can as well, but there's lasers that shoot a direct beam through everything that's in their path. And then as I talk about lasers, I should mention the final mission. So obviously this is a spoiler for a game that came out in 2005, I believe, in Europe, but the final mission has a laser that goes across 3 squares vertically straight down the middle of the entire map, and your Orange Star army who are in the middle will be completely obliterated, and it takes all units down to 2 health no matter what. Now the cool thing about lasers and cannons is they can't actually kill units, they can only ever bring them down to 1 health, but still it kind of really sucks when you're like lining up attacks and you forget that one little laser and it just completely obliterates you. And unlike modern Fire Emblem games, because Advance Wars obviously hasn't come out in years and years, the good old thing that I believe they started in Awakening is that there's like a button you can press and it shows you the range of all units and their attack range. So like you know exactly where...
Right, so you can see the purple area that everyone is going into.
Precisely. You know exactly where your safe spaces are, where units can be safe. They don't have that in this game, like early Fire Emblem games. So you really have to be systematic about going around your units, checking those cannons, checking those lasers, thinking, right, here I go, I'm okay, move on. And it's obviously something they would fix in a future Advance Wars if one ever comes. But it's just one of those issues that turn-based strategy games have advanced in that this game is still behind in. And it's understandable, but it's just still a big flaw when you have tons of cannons and lasers shooting at you. So anyway.
Yeah. I mean, you know, in terms of mechanics and just pure gameplay, I'm sure it holds up to this day. I'm sure you had a very good time playing it, but there are certain just UI elements that we are so used to with modern conveniences now that not having them is definitely... It's something that has put me off playing older Fire Emblem games on emulators and stuff because, like, for example, the Super Nintendo ones, you can't see the little preview window of how much damage you're going to do. You have to calculate it yourself based on the strength of your individual character, which is like extra work that is just not... It slows everything down. It just makes it not an enjoyable, like, fluid experience for me. So it's very understandable.
And I was prepared for this game to be like that, and I don't think it's particularly weaker as a result of not having it. It's just a game of the time essentially, and it's still just an unbelievably good game. Like, I think this is such a step up from the first game. I must admit, I did not use save states this entire game apart from the final mission. I had 5 days to go and my units were advancing very nicely. I knew that I was gonna beat the mission. And I thought, I'm in a good position, there's 5 days to go, just in case something bad happens, although I'm sure it won't. I'm going to make a save state, just in case. I'm not going to use it, because there's a big difference between using a save state and actually making one. So I just made one. With 2 turns to go, Sturm's CO, like, ultimate power is a meteor that just comes out of the sky, and it does a area of, like, 3x3, and like a laser, it brings all units down to 2 health. I stupidly put my 2 tanks too close together. The meteor fell on the tanks. They were both brought down to 2 health, which obviously isn't powerful enough to destroy the laser. I had 2 days left, and I failed the mission. And so I reluctantly said, right, do I play these 30 days again, or do I beat this game here and now? And I just went with the latter because I'm a sensible person and just accepted that I'm going to take a save state and just do it, because why not? So I beat the game. I was very happy. I did get an A rank overall for the campaign, which I was pretty damn chuffed about. And yeah, I really, really like this game.
Well, very good. The one question I had was, it's called Black Hole Rising. Are there any black holes in this game?
Yeah, the amount of time I sunk into it.
Oh,
like,
okay.
that is a black hole. You need a black hole to sink into this game, because this game, like I said, is just meaty and long and tough, and it really beats you up a lot. And I actually really love the game for it. And I just think that it is a better game. If you like Advance Wars and you didn't think it was the toughest game on the planet, and you thought, I really like that game, I want more of it, I can go tougher, I can do longer and harder, then you will absolutely love Advance Wars 2. If Advance Wars 1 was really tough and kind of pushed you to the limit, I don't think this is the game for you. So for me, I prefer this to the first game. I'm going to rate this very highly, but I don't think it's one for you, MBZ, perhaps.
Yeah, no. When you talked about the meteor, you gave me horrible flashbacks to when I did that last mission of Advance Wars 1, and I never want to see that thing again. That probably has made my decision for me.
That mission in Advance Wars 1, the final mission, there's a good 4, 5, 6 missions in this game like that mission, because you're using like 3 armies all like across the map coordinating, and really large maps, 30 to 40 days.
That thing took me like 3 fucking hours and wanted to make me murder myself, so I'm never touching Advance Wars 2 in that case.
It's a bit like the Fire Emblem Conquest of the Advance Wars series, is what it feels like.
Oh, okay. All right. I see your point of view in that case.
Yeah.
Sure.
So I'm not going to make that claim unanimously, because there are still 2 games in this series that I have not played, which of course are Dual Strike and Dark Conflict, I believe is the final game.
Days of Ruin, I think, is the European.
Yeah, they've got 2 names, of course they do, because why not? But I've heard negative things about Dual Strike, where the CEO powers become a bit overpowered, and because it's Dual Strike, there's 2 of them, so I have actually played about 10 hours of that game. I borrowed it off Alex, who I mentioned, who is the Advance Wars fan that I know. So I borrowed that off him a good number of years ago, and did enjoy it. But I do think from what I've played, this game is better. Dark Conflict gets a lot of poor reviews just because they completely changed the world and the art style and the characters.
Yeah, it just seems like they got away from the real, like, quirky, very colourful characters and made it much more of a gritty, dark, actual war game, which wasn't what the cool thing about Advance Wars was in the first place.
Precisely. The whole... Exactly right. The whole cool thing is that this is quirky. I believe it is perhaps kidifying war, and that is not a good thing. I don't like that, but does make war less intense and scary, and if they want to make a strategy game about war, so be it. Like, it's not trying to be serious, and maybe that game it's a fine line when you're doing a war game. Like, Advance Wars has said, like, we're not making it serious, don't judge us, whereas the second they go dark with something like Dark Conflict, it becomes a bit more serious, which is a shame. But
yeah, and ultimately it just doesn't feel like Nintendo anymore, right?
Yeah,
like, that's just what happens.
So, I mean, because I've played an Advance Wars game, I guess there's another time to just say, when is Advance Wars coming back? We need another Advance Wars game. And of course, Wargroove is coming, and that is quite similar in many ways, but not identical. It's very different in others. So I do look forward to playing that, but I do hope that one day, or perhaps even the Switch, could be the savior system for Advance Wars, and that it does come back at some point.
Look, as soon as Intelligent Systems figure out how to put waifus in Advance Wars, you'll get an Advance Wars game back there, right? Just deal with it for the time being. They haven't figured it out yet. It's too hard a problem to solve. Like, geez. So yeah, that's the main thing you've been playing. I guess it consumed your entire life.
Yeah, it did. It really did. But I'm so glad I played it.
Played some of the Splatfest as well. That's going on this weekend. So yeah, Splatoon still in the background for you a bit, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. I did enjoy the Splatfest. I've not collected my what do you even call those things? Shells. I was going to call them barnacles, but they're not
they basically are. Who knows?
Yeah, I'm going to collect my shells, but good old Team Flight apparently won in Europe, so I need to go check that out. So yeah.
Absolutely.
NBZ, you've been playing considerably a higher number of games than me, as per.
Yes.
Let's hear about it.
Lots of very relevant games. So last time I teased everyone with Sonic Mania by saying the one thing I'll say about Sonic Mania is that it reminds me of Super Mario Galaxy, which is a bit of a grenade to just leave and then walk away from. So let's address the elephant in the room. So I think it's probably important for me to lay out what my experience with the Sonic series is up to this point. because that gives you better context as to what I think is good about it and what I don't like about the series generally. I've played 4-5 Sonic games, I think. So I've played Advance, I've played Sonic Rush, I've played Adventure 2 Battle on GameCube, Generations, and I've also played Sonic 4 Episode 1. So those are all of the like mainline Sonic games that I've had contact with. Of those, my favorite Sonic games are Sonic Advance and Sonic Rush, both of which I think are excellent. And the real problem I find when people start discussing franchises and series, and I said this on Twitter a little while ago, is everyone just ignores handheld entries like constantly. And when people are talking about, oh, Sonic's been bad for years, like the entire GBA DS era, Sonic had really good games coming out, and people just seem to forget that happened. You know, like Sonic Advance is really good and Sonic Rush is super fun.
Handheld games? For whatever Don't you reason. Mean mobile games?
Oh, fuck off. I do not want to talk about that shit. That's really not a thing.
I'm just making the point that handheld gets a lot of short shrift from a lot of media often. So
it does.
If you're going to have good Sonic handheld games, they're not going to get much limelight, let's just say. Right,
and as someone who grew up on handheld games primarily, like, it's a big deal for me those games existed, and like with the Switch now, with everything being handheld, it's kind of just the best thing ever. But so yeah, the things that I liked about the Sonic series were it does have a bunch of exploration in it, and it has these big open levels that you can go through multiple times and find stuff, but it also has those moments of speed that, though you don't have a huge amount of control over, when they're executed well, feel super good. And there are moments in Sonic Mania where they have perfectly crafted these like small sections that feel like you're having to move and use your brain to react, but also you're constantly going fast within them. So it gives you like that incredible rush that you love from Sonic, but also gives you the space in which to feel like you're actually more interacting with it rather than just holding down the button to go. You know, as a lot of people say, that's all you do in Sonic, you just hold left, and then you run into an enemy, and then and I understand the complaint to some degree.
And but this game doesn't fix that complaint necessarily. Like it just it does other stuff.
Right. So at its core, this game is based off of the classic Genesis games. So Sonic 1, 2, 3, Knuckles, whatever. I don't really know the lineage as well as most people do, because not being a Sega person and not having grown up in that era. Again, I should mention I have played some of Sonic 2. It's a game that you gifted to me on Virtual Console back in the day. Hey, remember when you could gift people Virtual Console?
That was a cool thing.
Also, hey, remember when Virtual Console existed? Oh, right, as well. That's another thing. So I've played the first 2 levels of Sonic 2, and I think I just gave up at Chemical Plant Zone because there's this one area that is so fucking bad. Like, you go underwater and it's purple water that kills you if you don't get out of it, and there are these lifts that are like these 4 blocks in a row.
I have heard a lot about this purple water.
It's awful. Funnily enough, that level is in Sonic Mania. But I think that Sonic Mania actually overcomes a lot of those issues because it feels like it controls way better than those original games. And having had experience with Sonic 2, there's something about that era of games with platformers where I have this problem with Super Metroid, I have this problem with Super Mario Bros. 3. Like, around the Super Nintendo era, I just don't feel like games were as tight as they are nowadays, right? Like Super Meat Boy shits all over any SNES platformer in terms of controllability. I've not played Super Mario World, but for me, like
it's pretty slippy.
Era was that era didn't have the same kind of I know, for me personally, it's not the same thing. So I would compare this as going from Sonic 2 to going Sonic 2 to Sonic Mania is like going from Super Metroid to Metroid Fusion, where it just ups the game in terms of how you feel moving the character around. And so that area in Chemical Zone did take me a few tries, but I could actually get past it this time and like feel like I was able to go and actually enjoy myself.
Did you feel, I take it that because there's no D-pad on the Joy-Con, that you were using those face buttons?
Yes, I was.
Did it feel good?
Yeah, and you know, that's something that I mentioned when I was playing Mighty Gunvolt Burst earlier this year. I don't feel the need to have a D-pad anymore. I don't know, it's really weird. I just think it works in a strange way.
Converted?
Yeah, and I would, the day they announce a D-pad Joy-Con exists, I'll drop everything to buy one of those because I would like to have a real D-pad on my Joy-Con on my Switch. But for now, it doesn't really bother me, and I feel very weird about that because it was something I was very concerned with. But just in the act of playing this game, it's just not really been an issue. And Sonic Mania is much more of a platformer than Gunvolt was, because that's more of a kind of action game, right, in the Mega Man style. And I had zero issues. I never even thought about it, honestly. It just never really crossed my mind. So, yeah, that shouldn't be a worry to anyone. And playing handheld is fantastic because Switch screen is gorgeous and it just pops so incredibly well. It's such a bright and colourful game. And let's segue back into the kind of the claim I made about Mario Galaxy, because the thing that Galaxy does so incredibly well, and what that team does incredibly well, is it gives you an idea, it shows you that idea, improves upon it, expands upon it, and then throws it away and moves on to the next one. And Sonic Mania is constantly doing that in terms of not only like variety in terms of what the levels look like and the places that you see and run through, but the diverse amount of just weird mechanics that get thrown in there. Some of the boss battles is fucking crazy. Just some of the things they do that you couldn't have done back in the Genesis days, like with modern technology. It really feels like, and I can't remember what the phrase is, but there's a certain phrase for like these pixel art games that are in the modern era. I think it's high-bit, maybe, is a phrase that people use, where they are basically emulating the style of those old games, but they are using the modern hardware in order to do things that those old games could never have actually done,
like
if they were made.
Mechanics-wise, yeah, just make it more solid control-wise.
Yeah, and I don't even want to like mention a lot of the things that happen in Sonic Mania because they're just so joyous. And the thing that really surprised me is like every time I went into a new level and found something cool and interesting, I just had a smile on my face. Like it was really enjoyable to go through those levels and experience the new things that had been created. And there are probably some other things in there which are actually old stuff, but because I don't have that much familiarity with the old Sonic Genesis games, they are all new to me. So like a lot of this game is really new to me. I believe there are 5 brand new worlds. There's like 12 zones total, so it's really big. It's a much bigger Sonic game than ones I've played in the past. And I think 5 of them are new zones and the rest of them are like reworked old zones. But even the old zones, like Chemical Plant Act 2 has a mechanic which I'll talk about because it's very early on in the game, where there are these kind of gelled surfaces that Sonic can bounce off of, and if he like jumps on these needles, like these syringes, they squish like green jelly into the blue jelly, and the green jelly makes them way more bouncy so he can jump even higher. And they just do some really creative stuff with that thing throughout the entire level, and then you never see it in the game again. It just doesn't come back, and it just makes every level stand out and feel unique and just memorable, right? Like that's the cool thing about it, is like everything it's just a joy to go back and play through them. And so the one complaint that I see a lot with Sonic Mania, and some people have written articles about it and there's been a lot of complaints online, is hey, this is very old school in terms of its save system, because what happens is if you lose all your lives, you go back to not only the beginning of the act you're on, but to the beginning of the entire zone. So you go back to, you die on the boss at the end of Act 2, you go back to the very beginning of Act 1. And it's interesting because last time I was railing on Splatoon about how it really fucking pissed me off that they have limited lives in that game. And so it may sound controversial or even just hypocritical for me to come here and say I don't mind as much in Sonic Mania. But there's reasons why, right? And like I think you can't just generalize when it comes to stuff like this. And I feel like sometimes I do that. And generally, I do agree with the sentiment that lives are arbitrary and very old and shouldn't be a thing that are in games anymore, because it just wastes the player's time. And I do agree with that in Sonic Mania, and I feel like the people who have that problem, I understand where that problem comes from, and it pissed me off sometimes as well. But the thing that is important about Sonic is that running through these levels once is not really experiencing these levels. because they are so multi-tiered and multi-layered, and there are so many different paths. And because of the speed of it, you're just going past things so quickly that sometimes you may not see a path off in the corner, or sometimes you'll be at a crossroads and you have to choose left or right. And if you just run through the level once and just beat the boss first time, you don't see everything it has to offer. And that's a bit of a shame, because I think like these designers put so much thought into every path that's a part of the level, and it's really fun to go through the second or third time and re-experience it. Now, what I will say is I did actually cheat the system, because I found an exploit where I could get 99 lives, so that's what I did, and I grinded for lives, and then I never had to worry about it for the rest of the game.
Is that why you didn't mind the live system, because you found the exploit, or...
Oh, yes, I think that's part of the reason, is that I didn't actually have to worry about it personally. But what I will say is that the later levels in Sonic Mania, I don't remember as much, because I didn't run through them as many times, right? Like, because I knew that the bosses at the end of these zones were going to be really annoying. And I knew that I would enjoy the thrill of running through those levels again to see all the different paths, but what would annoy me more is if I came up against a boss that was so annoying that I would burn out on the level before I got... Like, I think there's a sweet spot, right? Going through the level 3 times is probably the sweet spot where you get to see everything and you're not annoyed by having to restart it again. More than that is when I start to fall off a bit, and there was a certain boss where I lost around 12 or 13 lives on, and every time you start up again you have 3 lives, so I would have had to go through that stage probably 5 times, right? And I think that would have been a problem for me eventually. I would have been at a point where I was just very annoyed at the game, and I mitigated that by doing the thing where I just cheated essentially. But I do think that I could have got through it and still enjoyed myself even if I hadn't, is the point I want to make. It's like, yes, it's annoying, but also, and it's also, I think, very much tied up with Sonic Advance in particular, because when we were younger, we didn't play as many games as we do now, and so we had like limited stuff that we would constantly replay, and Sonic Advance had 4 different characters, so I played through those levels multiple times with those multiple characters. I went to get the Chaos Emeralds because I thought that was a fun like mini game to do, and I explored those levels a bunch just because it was something that I kept going back to. So it may just be that Sonic gives me that certain mentality, but I don't know. I think that I think it is worth going through those levels multiple times, is what I'll say.
Do you think you'll go back to this game at all with the other characters?
Yeah, so I actually started a new game with Knuckles. The thing that annoys me about Knuckles is he was my favorite character in Sonic Advance, but in this game, he has horrible landing lag. So after you do the fly through the air, when you land on the ground, he like stops for a second, and then you can start moving it. I was like, oh, that really just kills all the momentum that I would like to be using Knuckles for. So I may do that, but the default is to play through with Sonic and Tails. So you basically have an AI who controls Tails. They don't really control Tails. It basically just follows wherever Sonic goes. And it's actually really nice because sometimes they get bonus hits in against bosses, and it doesn't matter if they get hit a bunch.
Apparently, they can also set off switches and Sonic can just die. Because it opens some sort of trap door, and then
I don't think that ever happened to me personally, but I can imagine that would be something that happens. It could be a bit annoying. I don't know. Tails was more helpful to me than anything else, so that was fine. But yeah, the last thing I want to say is like the Chaos Emerald stages that I remember from Sonic Advance were like these half pipe things that you collected rings around. Do you remember those, right?
Yeah. They were good fun.
Yeah, I like those, and I actually went and got all the Chaos Emeralds in Sonic Mania. Partially the reason is that because there are 12 zones, it doesn't quite act like other Sonic games where you have to get the secret area in every level. You can just keep going to the same secret area again and again. And there was a really quick one that I found in Chemical Zone, so I just kept going to that same one again and again, and every time you beat it, you unlock the next stage. So I did all 7 Chaos Emeralds just back to back, just doing them from that one area. And the minigame in this is really cool. You're like it basically changes to a 3D like behind the camera, and Sonic is like polygonal, and he's chasing after this gem which is being carried by a UFO, and you're like trying to build up speed by collecting these blue orbs while also collecting coins, because coins count as your timer, and so it's like constantly counting down. If you get hit, you lose a bunch of coins, and so your time goes down. Really fun. I actually, I wasn't really bothered about getting the supersonic stuff because that's what you get for doing the Chaos Emeralds, but I did those levels just because I found they were kind of felt a bit like F-Zero almost, like the kind of Super Nintendo isometric view of that kind of racing style game, but running with Sonic and being able to jump and stuff and like glide around corners. Really fun. I thought it was a very good execution on the Chaos Emerald stuff. So
cool.
I think Sonic Mania is really good, and I know, Bally, you're not as big a fan of Sonic stuff as I have been in the past, but this game is just so joyous and surprising in the thing that it does, and like that's the thing. When I came back to think about why I didn't like Mario 3, it all came down to it never surprised me, right? Sonic Mania constantly surprises me, and that's something that I think platformers need in order to make them fresh and interesting, and I think that's why Nintendo do so well with the Galaxy series, and even with 3D World and Land, with just the ideas just being thrown at you constantly, just this barrage, and yeah, I think it should be commended for that, because that's what really stuck out to me about it.
Cool.
So that's Sonic Mania. Excellent. You should all go play it. It's great on Switch. Really, really good fun. The next game I want to talk about is Uncharted: The Lost Legacy. So this is the kind of used to be DLC, but is now a full-fledged game, but it's also at a cheaper price. It didn't sell actually too well. First week sales in the UK, it seemed like I think people were under the illusion that it wasn't like a full-blown game when it
didn't have a ton of promotion, I guess.
No, I don't know. I think like they had a hard time like getting it marketed because it's not a numbered Uncharted and it doesn't have Nathan Drake on it, but it also is basically a full new game. It's essentially the length of Uncharted 1, and I think that that's a good thing, honestly, because one of my main criticisms with Uncharted 4 is that it was poorly paced. It just dragged on for a lot longer than it should have done, and I loved it. I thought Uncharted 4 was a fantastic game, really enjoyed my time, but it was like a little bit laggy here and there, where it's like, I'm climbing a bunch of stuff in very long sequences, like I need a break from this and stuff like that. I just don't think the pacing was hit very well. And Uncharted: The Lost Legacy just gets back into the action. Is like, yeah, this is like what you like from the original Uncharted games, like fast, you're constantly doing different things, always moving, and it's like 7 hours long. It's really tight, it's just excellently paced, and it's set in India, which is very important for me to explain why I like this game so much. When you open the game, you're at this market stall. There's like this girl trying to sell you something. She's trying to basically rip off Chloe, essentially, and like there are a lot of things in this opening section that it takes me back to me being in India when I went for the first time, the one only time that I went there. But also as someone who is culturally Indian, there are things like walking through the streets and hearing Hindi being spoken and like it feeling authentic, like hearing people go jaldi jaldi chalo and stuff like that, like stuff that I recognize as people in my family I've grown up with, like hurry up, like get out of the way, because you're going through this kind of war-torn area, and so people are hurrying away from soldiers into their homes, and so you hear a lot of like panicked like people shouting out Hindi phrases and words and stuff, which it's very interesting, because a lot of the time I hear people talk about how when games cater to a certain culture or to a certain region of the world, sometimes they just don't get it right, and they mess up.
They just botch it a bit. They just do the stereotypes. Yeah.
Absolutely. And Naughty Dog just have such care and attention to detail, and I think they just nail it, like from the little girl who's basically trying to get you because she thinks Chloe's a tourist and she doesn't realize that she's actually Indian, has this heritage. It's like street sellers constantly trying to hassle you and stuff.
Yeah.
And even down to like the rats, because my mum has told me stories of her being in India, mainly in cinemas actually, where sometimes there would just be this barrage of just rats on the floor fucking everywhere.
What?
And she is terrified of rats. Like she has had this phobia of them since she was young because of this, essentially. And they're just like running around the bottom of the floor, and she fucking hates them. And like while I was walking through these streets, I just saw rats constantly just running everywhere. I'm like, man, this is not only nailing the tone of the place I'm in right now, but it's just getting everything right in terms of what this place would be like, which I just stood out to me in a way that a lot of games don't, because I don't have the context for, but because I have this context, being, you know, having Indian parents and all that stuff. It was really cool, honestly.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's really cool, and the rest of the game is just so much fun. I think the relationship between Nadine and Chloe, who are the two main characters, it's fraught, and they go back and forth constantly, and, you know, there are ups and downs, but I think that, you know, the dialogue and the writing is so top tier. Naughty Dog, best in the industry for that stuff. It's excellently done. Story is very engaging. It's also interesting because it relates around a lot of the Hindu gods, so like Ganesh and stuff, and they're trying to find this holy artifact, which is the horn of Ganesh. And there's like this story that's being told, which is one that I think I actually know from when I was younger, like my grandfather telling me, and so that again like contributed to this whole thing. But I think the big thing that it does is, one thing is there's this big open world area at the very start of the game that is cool, and it's the first time it's been done in an Uncharted game, and it's about exploring a space that isn't massive but has a lot of like interesting little things you can do, and I found it fun. I found it a break from what you usually do, which is just running down corridors and explosions happening and set pieces, and it was a nice kind of break from that traditional Uncharted stuff, and I think they could expand on it well. But you have like this very physical map that Chloe pulls out every time, and you can kind of see where you are on it. It's just I like the representation of that physically within the game world. I think it's well executed. And then, yeah, when it does do the big set piece Uncharted stuff, I think it does it like just as well, if not better, than any other game in the series. Like, there's a sequence at the end that is breathtaking, just absolutely among the best they've ever done. And there's something about Uncharted that's incredibly compelling that pushes me through it to where, like, it was a Sunday and I was just sitting there from like 11 in the morning until like 4 or whatever. I played like 5-6 hours in a row because I just didn't want to stop. Like, it really pushes you through the narrative. You are constantly doing different things. The puzzle solving in this game is way more diverse. They have some really like tricky stuff in there that I think some people were complaining about, because Uncharted typically has had very easy puzzles in the past. But this game does, you know, tougher stuff, which I enjoyed, and just a lot of variation in it. Just so well paced. Excellent. I think it's actually better than Uncharted 4, which I don't think a lot of people are saying.
People are hardly talking about this in comparison. Yeah,
absolutely. And I don't know why that is, but I really loved it. I think it is fantastic. So the last thing that we have to talk about is the newest game on the Nintendo Switch, is everyone has been very happy about. Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle.
Who thought you would be saying that 5 years ago?
No one. I'm sure there's going to be some even more weird, strange things to come in the future if Nintendo keep doing these partnerships. But I think someone said something very apt, which is, this feels like when Nintendo partnered with Capcom to do the Zelda games on Game Boy. In terms of...
Was it NVC?
Yeah, it might have been, yeah. In terms of Nintendo worked with Flagship and they had some oversight, but mainly it was Capcom doing the development side, and they made Minish Cap, which is, I think, one of the best Zelda games. Like, it's really good. Like, it's hard to tell that it's not a Nintendo game, and you can if you look at it in certain aspects, but they did such a convincing job that, you know, most people wouldn't be able to say.
It's that polish, you know, this game has that polish.
And this game that is made by Ubisoft, that Nintendo has some involvement in, but relatively hands-off. Like, this is an Ubisoft game. It was released on a Tuesday, not a Friday, when Nintendo usually release games. Like, it was made by their internal development.
That's a huge thing. That's a huge statement right there.
It is. Yeah, it is, absolutely. This feels like a Nintendo game. It is very polished, very clean, looks absolutely gorgeous, and honestly, it basically has the feel of a 3D world in terms of aesthetic. Like, it's that close, and they've nailed it that well, that it feels like... So, you know, the overworld areas of 3D World, where you're kind of walking between levels, a kind of isometric view, that's kind of what it gives me the vibes of. Like, is that kind of zoomed out perspective. Cool. And it looks like, you know, you're just in a Nintendo game, but with Rabbids, right? And that's the thing where I think you can tell the non-Nintendo stuff going on here, because there's a lot of non-Nintendo sensibilities. Like, one of the first things you come across is this Goomba that's being pushed up out of the water with this like jet going up into its arse, and your robot buddy, who's like kind of the person, the Roomba who's leading your adventure, makes comment about it and is like, well, at least his backside's going to be clean. I'm like, as sanitary as that language is, Nintendo would never write that in a game, you know? Like, that's just not something you'd see in a Nintendo game.
B-Day's out of control.
Exactly, that's exactly what it is. And, you know, it keeps going up from there. It's very lighthearted. You have stuff like a giant bullet bill in a pair of underpants that's just, like, stuck on the side of a road. And there's this moment where you're in this kind of Egyptian area, and it does this slow zoom out from the ass of, like, this pharaoh rabbid. Like, this massive statue of this pharaoh rabbid, and you're, like, zooming out from its ass, and then you, like, run underneath it. It's like, there's definitely a bunch of toilet humor going on here in a way that I don't think Nintendo generally try and do in their games.
Right.
So you can tell, basically, is what I'm saying.
Are you any warmer towards these characters that are called Rabbids than you were before starting this game?
Yeah, 100% I am. I mean, I've never really been someone who hates things like minions and Rabbids. Like, and I know you, really? Bally, you're someone who fucking loves a good bit of slapstick comedy.
I do love slapstick comedy, so
yeah. So I think they appeal to you in a way, and yeah, they've never really bothered me in the past. I've never had this weird hatred that everyone seems to have of them. But you know, they're a passing thing where I'm like, okay, they're cool, they're fine. I think they do a really good job of the comedy in this game. Like, I think that slapstick stuff lands very well. The personalities they give the Rabbids I think Rabbid Peach is the standout, honestly, because she's constantly just taking selfies and doing this, like, whenever she comes across Princess Peach, she's like turning her nose up and all this stuff. Like, it's really well done. And I like that. I think the writing is not maybe as sharp as it could be. It's not quite that Treehouse level of quality that we come to expect from maybe like the Mario RPG games, which a lot of people praise because of their funny writing. But it's passable. It's good. I think it lands jokes sometimes, and sometimes it's like, okay, you tried. But yeah, it's more the physical stuff that has had me, pulling a smile on my face. But that stuff is all kind of like the aesthetic that surrounds it, because the core of this game is that it's a strategy experience. And so you have this battlefield, and it's interesting because it's not like a Fire Emblem where you have a bunch of units you have to worry about. And it's similar to XCOM, because in XCOM, I've been watching Giant Bomb series because I hadn't played XCOM before, but you have 4 units in that game when you deploy people, and I thought it was maybe a bit more, but this is huge more to that, because you have 3 units you can have on the field at any one time. And they all have their own abilities, different weapons they use. Luigi is a sniper, for example. Mario just has like a basic gun. I think Peach has grenades that she can use. So they all have like various like strengths and weaknesses. And you can go into a battle basically deciding on your party, but the interesting thing is that the battles are kind of set in blocks. So every time you start a chapter, there might be multiple battles within that chapter. And between battles, your health stays the same. So what you can do is, like, if someone has taken a bit too much damage, you can swap out a different character into their slot, and they'll be at full health and everything. So it encourages you, which I think is nice, to switch your party members around. And because this isn't explicitly an RPG, you aren't leveling up characters in the same way that you would be in, like... So some people have compared this to SteamWorld Heist. The one thing that annoys me about that game is that if you don't have a character in your party, they don't gain experience, and so they don't get better skills and abilities, which means you basically stick with the same unit the entire way through. Whereas here, everyone gets a bunch of skill orbs that you can put into the tree to upgrade stuff, and even when someone new comes in, they will retroactively have like tons that you can like invest in a bunch of different abilities. So everyone is always, as long as you're buying guns like frequently and upgrading people frequently, everyone is on a level playing field, which is nice because they all have really cool different abilities. So one of the main things that is important about this game is that movement is core. every time that an enemy is within your movement range, you can run up to them and dash through them. But the interesting thing is this doesn't impact how much you can move as a result. Like, it doesn't reduce your movement or like give you some negative bonus. You're encouraged to just use it because it's essentially a free attack that you wouldn't get otherwise. So you can run into them. You can basically pull off these chains where Mario, for example, can jump on an enemy's head to do damage, but he can also dash an enemy first, but he can't dash after he's jumped on someone. So you have to think of like, what is the priority here and what am I trying to do? So you get into this real mentality of, okay, I really need to think about what I'm doing this turn. But the nice thing is that you can basically do any action at any time. Even if Mario has moved, he can still use a special ability or attack. Or Mario can attack, then move, then use a special ability. Like, you can do anything at any time, but once it's done, you're locked out of doing that for the rest of your turn. So you basically have multiple actions you can do, but you can do them in any order you want. So it's this idea of like, okay, there are these two guys here, so I'm going to get Rabbid Luigi, who can dash through two people, to dash through both of them, then get behind cover so that he's now in range for Mario, who can dash to one of them but not the other, to dash to one of them, then jump on Rabbid Luigi, then get from Rabbid Luigi onto the other enemy, then get behind another piece of cover to shoot them, then go into Overwatch so that if the enemy moves next turn, I can shoot them and they'll be taken out. Meanwhile, Rabbid Peach can come along and heal them if she's in range of both of them. Like, you see how it starts to stack up and you're really getting your brain into gear of like what it needs to go after each other. So it can get pretty intense despite the fact that you only have these three characters, because you have so many options at your fingertips. And it's really fun to figure all that stuff out, because as you upgrade, you get like better abilities. There are like sub weapons you have. Like, one of the really interesting things is the ways that things interact in this system. So weapons have percentage chances to do like special effects. Like, one of them is called Honey, which will stick you in place so the enemy can't move for that turn if they're stuck in place. And one of them is called Bounce, which will just like knock them about the arena, and if they go out of bounds, they take extra damage, and that could end up killing them. But you have these interactions where, say someone uses a weapon and it bounces an enemy. If another character is in Overwatch mode, then as soon as that enemy starts bouncing, they'll like go into slow motion, pull out their gun and hit them like mid-air. So you get this kind of chaining combination going where you can be like, okay, I'm going to put this person in Overwatch, but I'm also going to shoot this enemy who moves whenever I shoot him in order to bait him so that my Overwatch activates this turn instead of waiting for them to come to me. So you can basically game the system to like speed things along if you want to. But you also have things like the remote drone that Peach and I think Luigi has as well. And that can be used as a distraction tool. So in a scenario where the enemy has put themselves into Overwatch, instead of wasting a character to like run out of cover, what you can do is use one of those drones and send that out instead. And that drone, because it's a moving target, will activate the enemy's Overwatch, so they waste it, and then you can move your character out of cover safely. So the way in which this stuff all just works as a system is super satisfying, and you just get these crazy moments where multiple things are happening at once, and it all just culminates in this incredible, like, epic thing. And it's awesome. I really, really like it. It's just been so much fun to go through and have these different enemies and eventually like have to think up strategies to get around them. Just a great game.
And you've got quite a lot of it left, haven't you?
Yeah, so I've been in the first 2 worlds. I believe there's 5 in total. But the other thing is, when you're exploring the overworld, there's kind of light puzzle solving. So it's not just going from battle to battle. It kind of breaks it up a bit.
And the battles are quite short, right? I've heard.
They're really short, yeah. They can be done in like sub 5 minutes a lot of the time. There are some longer ones, which obviously will take a bit more time.
You've not reached any sort of difficulty spikes or brick walls yet. I have heard that there's a difficulty spike at some point, but
the one thing that I will say is that sometimes you can mess up and it will really fucking screw you over. The thing is, like, every time, so if you're going to dash into someone, what you do is you press A and it locks in the action of dashing into them, but then you can still move after that. Whereas if you just press A on a place to move, it will just instantly move them, and you can't rewind that fact, right? Like, if you're dashing, you can rewind it. You can press B and undash from them and then rethink your move. There have been moments where I've been thinking for a very long time, what is my move? And then I move to dash into the enemy, and I accidentally hit the square next to them, and I just run next to them. And it just ruins my entire plan. Like, it leaves me out in the open, vulnerable, like, makes it so that I can no longer get the jumps that I was planning, because it's so crucial that everyone is exactly where they need to be, because every character interacts with each other on such a minute level that one mistake can cost you. So I was playing the boss of the second world, and I just fucked up with Rabbid Luigi, and I was done. I was like, I'm just going to restart this map, because I can't do this if I just fucked up like that. But I don't mind redoing the maps. I think they're fine. And going back to the puzzle stuff, like, at the end of every world, you just unlock a new ability, which basically lets you go back through the last area you were in, and you can basically just run through all the different places you've already been and see, oh, that stuff that I missed before, I can now come back and unlock a bunch of weapons, or like, there's art gallery and concept stuff that you can unlock as well. So I don't necessarily care about that, but I like re-exploring areas to unlock secrets and do puzzles. And I think there's like bonus stages if you can find them once you go back. So yeah, there's a lot to this game. There really is. And I think some people have bemoaned it because it doesn't maybe quite get the same tension as XCOM, because in XCOM you have like, oh, this is a 73% chance, can I make it, can I not? And there's that real like balance on a wire whether it's gonna be successful, and when you're successful it creates these great moments. Whereas in this game it's like 0%, 50% or 100%, and that's it, which makes it a bit more like a puzzle game than necessarily strategy. But I really appreciate that it simplifies that stuff, because it means that if you have a plan, you can execute on that plan without getting screwed over by RNG, and that's great, because I think that really, it makes it a more effective strategy game in that sense, like reducing the amount of randomness, essentially.
Nice.
So yeah, I've played a fuck ton. I love everything I've been playing. It's just such a good year for games, Bally. It's just disgusting how good it is. So yeah,
and there's Metroid and Mario to come.
Oh my god, Metroid comes out before next episode happens, Bally. So
we're gonna have to
maybe
play
talking about that. Yeah, maybe talking about that next time.
A suitable game to play for episode 100.
Absolutely, I'm excited. I'm looking forward to it. But yeah, that is going to do it for that segment. Went very long there, but hey, we had a lot to talk about. So join us.
Good games keep coming out.
Absolutely. Join us in the next segment where we'll be breaking down some of your emails. Don't go anywhere. We will be right back.
Hello everyone and welcome back to the show. It is time for the second segment, and that means of course it is your listener emails. So before I get on with the first email, I should say the email address because I always forget, which of course is ThisNintendoLife@gmail.com. That is ThisNintendoLife@gmail.com. Please send them in. We are running out again, I think it's fair to say. So yeah, we would really appreciate some emails, and you know, coming up to episode 100, big deal. Send an email, why not? You know,
absolutely. We need some more. Get out there, get typing on the keyboards, send us emails. We love hearing from you.
So our first email is from Marcus R, who's from Texas. I understand reviewing games is hard work, but should the inclusion of a feature or mode that is bad negatively affect its final score? I've been reading lots of Splatoon 2 reviews, and they're mentioning the frustrations of voice chat and the limited nature of Salmon Run. I agree with these complaints, but these two features were completely absent from the first Splatoon. Should their mere existence be praised, or should it have a negative impact on the score?
So when we talk about video game reviews, we get into hot, spicy territory because everyone has a take when it comes to game reviews.
What's your hot take, MBZ?
I don't know. I don't feel like I have a hot take on game reviews, ironically, having just said that. Mainly because they're just so different across the board, right?
Yeah.
And I just don't think you can... I don't think it is possible to just say one review should be done, or all reviews should be done by this one style, by this one definition, because different outlets are different. Everyone has different scoring systems. Even within people who have the same scoring system, the way they treat that scoring system is different. So it's just a bit of a mess, and it causes a lot of internet arguments. It just causes a lot of kerfuffle. I think 90% of the reason that happens is because of review scores. If review scores didn't exist, all those comments would disappear like overnight. I can tell you that for sure, because there are websites that don't do review scores, and let me tell you, their comment section is not a shithole because they're not arguing about an arbitrary number. I mean, it probably is still a bit of a shithole because there are always going to be people complaining about certain things, but the extent to which it would be is not as great. So,
I think feels like there's a growing number of people who care less and less about scores. While obviously some sites do it, and stuff like Metacritic is still quite important, I guess, in the sort of scheme of things. And it's obviously more important perhaps because it's an average of numerous reviewers. So...
Right, but they also have their own weighting system, right? Like a place like IGN will get bigger billing than Rando Blog over here, who doesn't have as many followers. So it's weird in that sense, but it's also weird in the sense of a site like Giant Bomb, which runs on a 5-star system. If they give a game 3 stars, that counts as a Metacritic 60%, which is not really what 3 stars means by their metric. You know, like they take the number and boil it down to a thing which it doesn't necessarily reflect.
I think that Splatoon's an interesting one, where when Splatoon came on the scene in 2014, and it was just such a big deal that Nintendo had, new IP, a shooter, like Nintendo making a shooter, an online shooter. Like, this is just unprecedented for Nintendo. It was like a huge deal. I think that even though the first Splatoon had its faults, like the matchmaking is still horrendous, you're like forced into maps. I think that people were more willing to turn a blind eye because of the fact that the good stuff is just so good. Like, it's a really
and it's so innovative,
system.
Right? Like,
it's
it just
so
completely changed the core concept behind a third-person shooter that's played online by making it not about direct conflict, but about, territory control. Like, it was a subversion that was very Nintendo-like and also incredibly polished and just well executed. So that made it stand out more, and so its flaws may have been given a bit more slack as a result.
Exactly. So then by the time you come around to Splatoon 2, the concept is broadly identical. The added modes, there will be a lot more scrutiny for those added modes, because people have sort of said, right, we got the main modes we had before, they're great, they work, they've still not improved, matchmaking, you're still forced into maps, there's still some issues in that sense, they've stuck very rigidly to their original formula, and with this new stuff, there's some ups and downs. Like, we've personally said we really enjoy Salmon Run. I'm not personally massively bothered by the fact that it's only infrequent, but I know that that's a perfectly legitimate criticism from many reviewers. Obviously, we don't have to get into the voice chat in that game and that whole app. And we've talked about the app in detail, and I think it's quite good, although I don't like the voice chat. It just doesn't work, the matchmaking, that sort of thing. So how do you distinguish between these added features and the existing features? I think more time is spent scrutinizing the additional features with a sequel like Splatoon, and that can sometimes make, in my opinion, reviewers forget that actually this is still an incredible game, and that massive impact that the first game had, where it was given a free pass, not free pass, that's an unfair statement, but to say it was given more leniency with its faults because of how big of an impact that initial concept and how smooth those mechanics were first time round.
But, if you recall the original Splatoon reviews, they weren't 100% glowing either, because Nintendo often gets, thrown over the coals for their poor online service. not only that, but the original Splatoon launched with a very limited amount of stuff available. There were 4 maps total. Ranked mode wasn't even unlocked from the start. Like, you didn't have any bonus things that weren't just the single player mode. And I remember IGN's original score being 7 something, and then they went back later after Nintendo did all their content updates and updated it to like an 8.5 or something. So people will go back, and there's a trend in the industry now to do things like reviews in progress, which means, hey, we're going to wait until the online features are ready to give it a score so we can see how it functions in a real setting, or re-reviews where they go back and change the score later depending on the updates that have come out. Like, there are so many games these days that require that, things like Destiny and Overwatch, and even things like Rainbow Six Siege, like these big online focused multiplayer games that out the gate can be one thing, but over time they morph into something better, as a result, people going back to that original review score aren't really getting a good reflection of what that game is. So in the future, if Splatoon improves its systems and is able to get that, I would imagine there will be some websites that go back and change their scores and be like, okay, now it's in a place where it should be. But it's interesting because Splatoon and Nintendo, and generally I think people feel like Nintendo get a pass on some things because they're Nintendo and there's like nostalgia tied up in them. But I don't know, I feel like it's hard to rate that stuff and kind of get down what all of it means.
It's ultimately a lot of opinions, and everyone knows what happens when you mix opinions with the internet. It's a dark place. It gets brutal, it gets violent, it gets all sorts of things. So reviews are a tough place, and there's no right or wrong with comparing Splatoon 1 to Splatoon 2 on what you criticize, what you add to your score when you're weighting a score and things like that.
And I think also it should be noted that, and everyone says this, but like, scores don't start at 100 and they start chipping away points for things that go wrong. Like, I just think people just don't understand how reviews are done. Like, someone plays the game, writes their thoughts, and most of the time the last thing people do is put a score on it, right? And the score is kind of a reflection of how do I generally feel about this game overall, and its consistency and just my general attitude towards it. That's it. Again, scores are a shortcut. You shouldn't focus on the score, because without the text that backs it up, it doesn't mean fucking shit. Like, it just doesn't have any context to it, and doesn't, it does nothing.
And there'll be plenty of reviewers out there who they'll see like other review scores before they write their review, and then maybe to avoid confrontation or like something, they'll just go for the average, and like,
I disagree with that, Bally, 100%.
There will be some out there that definitely do that.
No. Okay, maybe if you're talking about smaller blogs and stuff, but in terms of the big websites and people like that, they have like ethics stuff for a reason, and I think people get very caught up in this thing and being like, oh, reviewers are paid off and biased, and it's like, no, guys, like, there is a wall there's editorial people. Every time I hear a reviewer talking about them reviewing the game, they always say they never look at other people's review scores in order to that not be a problem, right? And generally that is...
Well, I don't think anyone would ever admit to not doing that, but...
Bally, they can't. That's the thing. Embargoes exist, right? And like, unless they're doing like backdoor, like telling each other what their score's going to be, which they're not doing, because that's not what reviewers care about. Like, they don't actually. I think the thing is, a lot of these people don't really want to put a score on something because they know it's going to, create a backlash if it's low or high or whatever. Like, no matter what happens, they're going to be in shit for it because the internet is a, catastrophic baby that can't shut the fuck up. And so that doesn't happen. Like, I know that there will be smaller places that maybe they review the game later and will want to be in a certain area of the thing so they don't raked over the coals. But when you're talking about the main institutions, that's just not happening. So I don't want to, throw that out there as a thing.
No. I wasn't referring to main institutions, but certainly it is out there where there's a whole lot of mixed reviews on a whole lot of games, and like, sometimes low and high scores can be controversial on purpose to, like, create more debate, create more traction, that sort of thing. That's what I was going for.
I feel like that's very conspiratorial, honestly. And I get where you're coming from with like the smaller websites, because smaller websites obviously don't get people to go to them because of the personalities or the people there. They go there because it's another review about this game, and that's what they thrive off of, right? Is like, hey, we have a review, this is our score, come click our website. And so I think, yeah, that you can say possibly in those scenarios, but that's just not the case when it comes to the major ones.
Well, Double Dash shouldn't be 7.9, so there we go. Anyway, right.
Well, yeah, all right. Let's not discuss that.
Our next email is from T-Bar, who's from the internet. I wanted to ask if you guys have any lesser-known upcoming games that are on your radar or that are in development that you've been keeping an eye on. For me, the one game that comes to mind is Wargroove, which you guys actually mentioned in the last episode. I remember first seeing it in the Switch Indie Direct way back earlier in the year. As soon as I saw something like Advance Wars, I immediately wanted to know more, and have been keeping an eye on it ever since. Since we haven't gotten any new Advance Wars in so long, I'm hoping Wargroove is an excellent spiritual successor when it finally comes out. I was wondering if you had any similar games you're tracking the development of. T-Bar.
All right. There's a lot of cool things coming to Switch. We're going to talk about some of them in the next segment, because there was the Nindie Direct, which highlighted a bunch of different games that are coming out over, the end of this year and start of next year. I think one of them that I want to pick out from that in particular, which Bally, I'm sure you're interested in, is Golf Story, which is actually coming out, I think, this month, which is crazy. Like
really soon.
It's essentially a spiritual successor to the Camelot Mario sports games on Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance, and basically mixing RPG with a bit of golf. How do you feel about this, Barry?
I'm very interested. I absolutely loved both Mario Golf and Mario Tennis, more so Mario Tennis on the Game Boy Color specifically, because they took away the RPG modes in the N64 versions of those games, which was an unusual thing to do, considering you could take your character from the Game Boy Color game and then insert them into the N64 game using the transfer pack. So I got like a really powerful guy playing through the campaign on Mario Tennis on Game Boy Color, shifted him over across to the N64 and just like won all the tournaments on N64 because he was like great stats and things. And that's the cool thing, is that like you're gradually improving your stats. It's making your shots harder. You can go faster. And it's a really great gaming loop to get in. And I was intrigued to see I'm intrigued to see what the golf mechanics are like. Like I hope it is similar to the classic Mario Golf on N64 and Game Boy Color, where it's sort of like the swing meter, and then so you sort of estimate it, that sort of thing. Like I hope they nail those mechanics, because I'm sure that's the most important part ultimately. Like get those mechanics right, see where it goes from there. But I'm definitely intrigued. And yeah, T-Bar, like honestly, Wargroove, that game is looking great. It actually looks. There's some parts of it mechanically that are very different to Advance Wars. Like there's a unit which is almost like a king and queen merged into one unit in chess, which I guess is like taking Advance Wars but then making it very much like your main hero, or like Lord in Fire Emblem, where like if they die,
it's essentially like making the CO a character on the field. Yeah,
it's like turning the CO into a lord, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, basically.
It's interesting. So I'd like to see how that works. And yeah, I'm definitely intrigued and want to pick up Wargroove. Golf Story, I'm on the fence, but I'm intrigued. I want to see how it does. Because
Golf Story just has a really great aesthetic. The pixel art is fantastic.
Right.
It just looks so nice. So that's why it's appealing to me a lot.
Yeah, if that gets some decent reviews, I think I might jump on it. MBZ, anything else on the list you want to get off your chest?
I think that... Are we talking about the Nindies list or just anything generally now?
Anything.
All right. One thing that I think is going to be super cool and great for like local co-op and online even is Ultimate Chicken Horse, which is coming, right. I don't know when, but I've watched the Giant Bomb guys play a bunch, and it is
looks like that other game Giant Bomb played. What was that other one?
Which one?
There was like one with like three-dimensional fighters that were sort of derpy looking in the same way, where they'd
Gang Beasts, I think.
Gang Beasts, that was the one, yeah. It looks similar.
I think Gang Beasts would be a great fit on Switch as well. I don't know if they've announced it, but absolutely Gang Beasts should be on Switch. Ultimate Chicken Horse is basically, I describe it as reverse Mario Maker, because you're trying to plant all these objects. There's like a big pit, or a big area between like you and the goal, and you have to basically place objects in space, and you're trying to both hinder your opponent but also get over there yourself. So you don't want to make it too hard so that you can't do it, but also make it so that other people fail, and it just becomes a big mess, and is very cool. So that's one that I'm interested in, especially to play with you, Bally. That'd be fun. And then a couple more. Owlboy, which wasn't mentioned in the Nindies Direct.
So good that's coming.
Yeah, I've been waiting to grab it for a while because it's been quite expensive on Steam.
I guess that shows how well it's doing if it's retaining its price for that longer time.
Yeah,
right?
perhaps. So yeah, I've been waiting on a sale on it, but nothing really got me to go out and get it straight away. But I think I would actually prefer to wait for it on Switch because it's the kind of game that I want portably. So yeah, Owlboy looks fantastic. Again, great pixel art in that one. Enter the Gungeon is coming, which Bally, you've played
I played briefly a bit last year actually over in London at my friend Alex and Shaq's place, and we had a good time. It's like a dungeon crawling rogue like.
Yeah.
Have I got that terminology right? It's sort of
sure.
Yeah, it's sort of like top-down shooter.
Do you know if you like retain stuff like money or experience or anything when you go in, or is it like pure
Don't think so.
roguelike?
I think it's pure. Everything's out the window when you restart.
Okay.
I believe.
All right.
Certainly in the multiplayer, it might not be in single player. I'm not sure.
Sure.
I am intrigued that World to the West is coming to Nintendo Switch because we interviewed Peter from Rain Games about this game last year at Gamescom.
We did, indeed.
It did come out on Wii U. We didn't pick it up at the time.
It did not actually come out on Wii U.
Did it not at all?
So, no, it didn't. So, yeah,
Wow.
it's still, I believe, in the works. I think they're still working on a Wii U version, even at this point, which I think it was interesting because at the end of last year, or it was an interview that Damon Baker had with Nintendo Voice Chat where he said that at the end of last year they were basically going to a lot of their indie partners and saying, hey, look, you should can this Wii U version and bring it to Switch instead. So I think that the reason it didn't release on Wii U when it should have done is because that conversation was had and the move to Switch
we want
was
to
made
play it on Switch. Like it's just
absolutely
if
yeah.
You can if you're ever in doubt, you want it on Switch because it's just the better system to play. Unless you're talking about graphical fidelity, which almost all these indies it's like irrelevant. Like the Switch,
it's absolutely irrelevant.
It's just perfect.
Yeah, so I believe it came out on PS4 already, and it's on Steam and stuff. But
cool.
That's one that I would definitely be willing to pick up. And another multiplayer one is Towerfall, which I think a lot of people have praised over the years, and that's something that I'm looking into. And I think the big one for me is Hollow Knight, which I've played. Yep. I'm not going to play it again, but boy, that game's fucking really good.
And I want to play that game on Switch, so yeah, that is
100%
exciting. So yeah, Owlboy and Hollow Knight are like
they're perfect.
Metroidvania is coming to the Switch. Like it's a great system for Metroidvanias as well because it's a really nice handheld thing to do.
Yeah, and especially I think the nice thing about Metroidvanias is some of them revolve around the idea of save rooms and stuff, and the Switch's portability means that you don't actually necessarily have to get to a save room when you want to stop playing, which I love. Is like you just go to home menu and put into sleep mode.
And I mean, there is that big Metroidvania coming out from Nintendo actually in September, but it's not coming to Switch. So
yeah, that little Metroid
there
game.
We go. But anyway, we're gonna experience Metroidvania on Switch anyway.
The last one I want to point out is another one that I saw in a Giant Bomb video. There's just a weird, fun physics thing that kind of reminds me of Gang Beasts. It's called Human Fall Flat. And I actually got a Steam code for this the other day because it was in a Humble Bundle for like $1. And it's this really weird, you're like this kind of clay man who like blobs around this world and you have to perform physics, tasks to get around the place. You should go and watch the quick look because it's a really funny...
Sounds like Octodad.
It's much less... hard to control than something like Octodad, but I guess the sensibility is there as well. But yeah, that Giant Bomb quick look is really funny, so you should check that out.
Sure.
There's lots of really cool things that are coming to Switch, and a lot of them haven't even been shown in Nintendo videos or anything. They're just like announced as projects, and that's great
Lots
because
to come.
yeah,
We'll talk
wanna
about
see
that
more.
more in the next segment. But
Yeah.
our final email this week is from Andre, who's from the United States. Hey, Bally and MBZ. I'm a newish listener to This Nintendo Life. I found it a few months ago after MBZ's Fire Emblem 6 video showed up in my YouTube suggestions. Great voice acting skills, by the way.
Thank you.
I have a question that I would love for you to bring up on the show. Have either of you ever rage quit a game before? The last game that I rage quit was Golden Sun: The Lost Age for the GBA. I was fighting the optional boss on Treasure Island for an additional summon, lost the fight, and found myself sent to my last save point 2 hours of gameplay earlier. Stupid of me not to say right before a boss fight, I know. Anyway, I was so furious that I actually threw the cartridge into my cabinet and haven't touched it since. I'd love to hear about your experiences with the fire and the fury that video games can bring out of you when they don't go your way. Thanks, guys. I love the show. Andre. P.S. I have to ask MBZ. Is MBZ the name you go by in real life? I've noticed that Bally never slips up and calls you Nick or something by accident while recording, which makes me think he and possibly other friends actually know you as MBZ. Just curious.
Yes, the idea of our real names has not been brought up in a while, Bally.
Yeah,
we
so
should probably mention again for new listeners.
I guess if you're a listener from you'll know our names if you've been listening a long time, but I guess we should say every now and then, like, because when we started the show, we decided what name shall we go by, and
well, it was also because my channel and I've been known as NBZ, and the show started on my channel, so that's just what I did because that's what I've always been called.
And on the internet when I was younger, I had like really dumb names like the Wind Waker and Jack White the Fifth. And then so my real name in the real world is Alistair. But my full name is Alistair Ballantyne, so a lot of people call me, it's like Ali Bally, and that's shortened to Bally. So like a lot of people call me Bally as well as Alistair. So
I just called you Bally in real life as well anyway.
So MBZ, you call me
easy.
Bally in real life, and when we started the show, we were like, shall I be Bally or Alistair? And you were like, well, it'd be weird if I call you Alistair, and seeing as so many people call me Bally, we just went
because
with
I never
Bally.
called you Alistair these days anyway. And then back in the day, you used to be Ali B, because as we always mention on the show, our good friend Ali T, so there were two Alistairs in our year at school, and so Bally was Ali B, and Ali T was Ali T, so that's how it went. But
MBZ,
eventually.
What is your story? Because I don't call you MBZ off the podcast.
No, you don't.
Which a lot of people might be surprised at. And I just have a switch in my head that I just turn on, and it's really weird, and I don't know how I do it.
For all the times that you forget names, somehow you've been pretty consistent in just calling me NBZ all this time.
Yeah.
No, so my real name is Naman, which is an Indian name that no one can fucking pronounce to save their lives. And so over the time, like when I was at school, like no one correctly said it, so I told people to say it different ways and everything. But I've just never used it online or anywhere because it's just an awkward name, and I'm not a big fan of it personally, so I just don't like using it. But I did use it on the Famicast. Those guys called me by my real name. Which was interesting. I don't know, maybe one day, Bally, will just change and I'll just use my real name.
One day
because
we could switch.
Yeah.
I feel like I wouldn't switch just because so many people call me Bally in the real world, but who knows, I might.
Yeah, and I'm not going to call you Alistair on the podcast. That's just weird for me, so, you know.
Yeah, so it's a weird one. But yeah, in terms of outside the podcast, I call him Naman, but he calls me Bally, so that might be a bit weird for people to know, but there you go. Anyway, that's our name recognition for another 50 episodes, but
we'll come back to that eventually.
What rage quitting? Well, let's talk about rage quitting.
Rage quitting.
I feel like you have more video game rage than me.
Yeah, I think I do. I don't know. I'm trying to think of any examples when we were younger of me actually like physically rage quitting. It's more a case of
burnout.
Like when my memory cards like broke and shit, I just cried as opposed to rage quitting, you know? Like there was this one time where one of my memory cards, which was like the good memory card.
You just had a dodgy ass GameCube memory card.
Yeah, but I had a good one that you had recommended. There was still a third party one, but it was a really big one. Do you remember the big chunky one?
Yeah, I had like the darker clear one, you had the lighter clear one.
Yes, yeah. And that one worked great the whole time. And then one day I put it in and there was nothing on it, and I lost my fucking mind. I was like crying to my parents. I was just like a mess. And then I went back to it and I was like, oh wait, no, it's not actually, it's fine. I just blew on it and it actually worked again. so that was fine.
I feel like there were times I was at your house where this would happen, and then I'd take it out, blow it, and put it back in, and you'd be like, Bally, that was magic, do it again. Like, yeah. But then
we may not have grown up in the era of Super Nintendo and NES of cartridge blowing, but we certainly did grow up in the era of memory cards. So similar
There's
problems.
Stuff online that says you shouldn't do it. I don't believe it for a second.
Probably. I actually have no idea if it's good or not, if it's harmful. I don't think there are any points of me like physically throwing anything or getting angry in that way, because I valued my controllers too much to damage them.
Right.
You know?
Same.
Like,
I have, and I've talked about this on the show before, I have this crazy attitude to most games when I get stuck, of just like this brick wall mentality. Like, I will do this no matter what. I am just going to keep plugging away at this. And I've never sort of given up and rage quit. I just do it. Like, games that I quit, I don't rage quit. I just burn out on. So stuff like, I've played Fire Emblems in the past that I've still not finished, and I'm meaning to get back to them. And then there's other stuff like Xenoblade Chronicles X that I sort of burned out on just because it was just too much. Like, that game
it's very
is just
easy to burn out on that game.
Yeah. So, and I'm less keen to go back to that. I'm definitely keen to go back to stuff like Fire Emblem Sacred Stones, for example,
yes.
Which I only played a bit of. But so yeah, I don't rage quit. I just burn out, I guess is fair to say. I've gotten very, very angry at certain bosses on multiple games. And I think you've seen that before, MBZ. But it's not like it was never in question that I'd quit. It's like, I have to beat this boss. Like, it's gonna happen, sort of thing. So.
You do tend to get a little bit angry at Splatoon when you're playing online.
Oh, yeah.
That's a different thing. That's playing online
definitely.
games, which is it's a different beast, I think. Certainly brings out the hatred in many people. That's why talking to people online has never been a good idea.
That competitive ranked, it makes my blood boil.
I know, I can tell. So I have two examples of recent memory where I've just fucking been so sick of a game that I'm just like, fuck this shit, I'm never playing it again. The first one is Dust: An Elysian Tale, which is actually a really good game that I enjoyed most of. And it's not really a Metroidvania. It's like it has platform action elements to it, but it's not as non-linear as most Metroidvanias would be. But it's made by one guy and it is incredibly well animated. It has voice acting in it. It's very impressive as a game that's only made by one dude. And the last boss is the most fucking frustrating thing I've ever done in my life. I think a lot of the reason is because it's an RPG as well. I've never beaten it, no. Right. It is an RPG, and so you can go back and grind enemies and level up and get your health a bit better and stuff, but God, that would take a fucking long time, and I just didn't have the patience to go back and do that, so I just banged my head against the wall against this boss, which has literally 4 fucking phases that you always, every time you beat one, you're like, okay, am I through? Oh no, there's another thing. Like, I got to the bottom of this 3rd phase, where it's like, I finally finished it, and it's like, oh no, now there's a 4th phase where you're over lava, and there are precarious platforms to jump on, and he's still doing the same patterns that he did last time, and he has more health, and I was like, fuck. Like, I got to that bit, died once, I was like, no, this is insurmountable. I am never going to fucking beat this. So I just gave up. I was like, I went to YouTube, looked up the ending. I was like, okay, I've beaten this game now. I'm done.
And it is important that because of YouTube and stuff like that, when you do meet like a final boss, and you've talked about numerous JRPG final bosses that are just an absolute pain to beat. And it's just a trope almost now. And it's like, YouTube is out there. If you can't beat this boss and you want to find out the end of the story, just do it, and like be at
no one's going to judge you for it.
Be at
honestly,
peace with your mind. Like, we're here to have fun. We're not here to be. We're not MLG pros, We're just,
no,
just a bit of fun.
That said, I do tend to try and beat every game I play. And I think both of us do want to do that, but we don't like make it a binding thing.
Yeah, I mean, we don't want to come back on the next show and say, I got stuck and I gave up. Like, I don't want to be John Lindemann on Super Mario Sunshine getting 8 shrines.
Call out.
I said shrines, I mean shines. So yeah, good old John Lindemann. So yeah, I want to I want to beat games, head up against a brick wall, and that's me. So yeah, we're not quitters. We are not quitters.
No. So the other one is Final Fantasy 13-2.
I was on Skype with you when you were fighting one of these bosses.
Oh my god.
I remember that.
13-2. So here's a controversial statement. I think 13 is better than 13-2, and I think most people think the opposite, which I can't really comprehend, but sure, if you want to have your bad opinion, you can do that. Final Fantasy 13-2 is a garbage fucking truck of a game.
Is it a 7.9?
Yes, absolutely, 100%.
Okay.
No, the worst thing about it is I came back to it having played a bunch of PC stuff, because I started it on my PS3 before I got my PC. I came back to it and I'm like, God damn, the frame rate on this thing is garbage. It was almost making me physically sick. I'm like, how did I even play this game beforehand? This is so bad. Literally 20 FPS a lot of the time. And I forced my way through the end of it, and I was like, it took me 20 hours total to get to the end. Not from when I picked it back up, but total game clock time from when I had done previously as well. And I get to the final boss, and it's just this gauntlet again, as all JRPGs, and I just had no motivation to go back and grind, because I just wanted to barrel towards the finish line, and I couldn't do it. And apparently there is an easy mode switch that you can flick if you want to, but quite honestly, that game sickened me so much that I just was not even
But have you seen YouTube? Are you at peace? Is it all good?
No, because honestly, the story didn't care. I didn't have enough stakes in the story for me to even bother looking up. And apparently, the real ending is locked behind DLC anyway. So thank you, Square Enix, you motherfuckers. That's real good. And then I never played Lightning Returns, which is the third Final Fantasy 13 game. Now, here's the thing. Everyone will tell you the other two Final Fantasy 13 games that aren't the first one are better. Final Fantasy 13 is a really good game, and you can all go shut your mouths, you motherfuckers. I like that game. People hate it, Bally. 13 is a hated game. So anyway,
I think
got that off my chest.
After you got that off your chest, MBZ, I think that's all we got time for your emails. But again, our email address is ThisNintendoLife@gmail.com. That is ThisNintendoLife@gmail.com. Please send your emails. We would really appreciate them for episode 100. Coming up next episode, which is mind-boggling. Anyway, join us after the break, where we will be doing a bit of a news roundup, including some of those Nindies that were revealed. So don't go anywhere. We will be right back.
Alright everyone, welcome back to the final part of the show, and we are here to talk about a few newsy items. There was a direct, not really, it was a showcase, I guess they call it.
A presentation.
I think, the Nindie something or other, whatever phrase they use.
Nindie Switch Summer Showcase.
Do you think they're moving away from the direct as a name? I don't know. It seems like so far this year there's been a lot of showcases and stuff like that as opposed to directs.
I think it might make a return. We'll see.
Yeah, probably they'll just use it for their main stuff, I guess. But it's this similar sort of thing. It's very similar to the one they did early in the year with Damon Baker, again, who's their indie guy presenting stuff. Very quick stuff. But we will cover that after we cover our first news topic, which is the death of the Miiverse. RIP Miiverse. Bally, at the end of each show we used to give out our Miiverse names so that people could follow us on there and see what we were writing.
We still do in the YouTube description of our videos.
It's still there
Miiverse
if
tags,
you,
indeed.
if you want to.
I liked Miiverse. I think I tweeted this before, and I think it was just a great concept executed relatively poorly. I just think that it was very slow loading. It wasn't instantaneous enough. But the idea of posting screenshots, commenting on them, and having like online communities within the Wii U space to communicate and talk about games was just such a great idea.
Yeah, ultimately it was a innovation that was very, very flawed. And I think that one of the interesting things that Jim Sterling always talks about with the Sonic series is that Sonic never sticks with one idea. It just keeps going to different ideas in the hope that those will be better. Instead of being like, oh, Sonic Colors was good, maybe we should keep doing this for a while and improve on it and iterate on it. But they don't. And this feels like Nintendo is like, let's do this one idea. Nah, it didn't work. Let's just move on and not do it anymore. Because I think if they had brought it back for the Switch, it could have been executed in a really smart way. Because
there's a chance something will come around at some point. Just maybe not anytime
right.
soon.
I mean, there's a chance of a lot of things happening.
Maybe a virtual
but
console.
Will they? Yeah, we'll see. That's the problem here. I think the thing that really strikes me about the Switch is snappiness, right? Like the quickness of the interface, how you can get from place to place so quickly. I think Miiverse would fit there much better, or even just have it more embedded as part of the system instead of like a menu you have to go into to open a separate app. Just have it something that is automatically able to just post from any game, like you do with the capture button. Maybe from every photo you can just do a direct to Miiverse as well. Like just ways to streamline it so that it's not so cumbersome to get into.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the sad thing about this news is that stuff that Nintendo makes money from, they keep open as long as possible. So, like the Wii Shop channel's still open, right?
It is 100% still open.
And like we're talking about the Wii, which came out in 2005, 6. So
yeah, but honestly, I don't think Nintendo are really making much money off the Wii Shop channel. I think the one reason that thing is still up is because there are so many Virtual Console games on there that just never went anywhere else. Because after Wii, they really dropped the ball in terms of number of releases and just a cadence of releases. So stuff like Final Fantasy VI, for example, you just can't play on any other Virtual Console library. It just doesn't exist there. Unless you live in Japan, of course, but that's a different beast. So, yeah, it's just like... people would be incredibly annoyed and angry. And I think people are very mad that Miiverse is dead, but also that's such a small audience. And, you know, people don't have money invested in like a big library of games, you know, with Miiverse, so it's not the same thing.
No, it doesn't have anything like as big of an impact. You're right, but it's sad, and it's like I said, I hope it's an idea they bring around again soon.
Any good memories you have from Miiverse of like things that were cool about it?
I just love the fact that you could like, it was really crucial to sharing and talking about like Mario Maker levels and that whole community that sort of Mario Maker really focused on, and it was just so important in how that game ran. So that would probably have a big impact. I mean, Mario Maker will most likely come to Switch at some point. We don't know quite how or why or who, what or when, but like that has to be a thing. So having some sort of way of sharing those courses in the future, they'll have to think of something a bit like the way they sort of shoehorned in the Miiverse like drawing part into Splatoon 2.
Yeah, it seems like maybe what they're going to do is take the aspects of Miiverse stuff that were in those games and just make them a part of those games as opposed to any explicit Miiverse feature. So I could see the Mario Maker stuff being shared to Twitter much more easily and stuff like that. You know, I think it's just leveraging the current existing social platforms and trying to do a similar thing to what they did on Miiverse is probably the direction they're going to go in. For me, I don't know, there were moments with certain games where the Miiverse was a real help in terms of like a game guide almost, where you could go in there, post about, oh, I can't figure out how to get past this. And if it was an active Miiverse, like early in the Wii U's life cycle, there would be people posting there and people would be looking to help each other. And it was a nice kind of community thing there that was happening. Like, I remember when I was playing through Wind Waker HD, there was this one puzzle that, I don't know, I got stuck on a Wind Waker puzzle somehow, even though that game's really easy. It was to do with like carrying a statue across like this one area. And I posted, I was like, I don't know what to do here. And someone replied to me. It's in Tower of the Gods, yes. And someone replied to me and was like, oh, you do this. I'm like, oh, right. I was thinking about it in the wrong way. When Box Boy first came out, that was really helpful. Box Boy was really good because
being able to do that without having to go online. It's just so cool.
Yeah, and it was really cool with Box Boy especially because people could just draw out the solution on Miiverse. Like, they could literally draw the where the boxes should
Sometimes
be and how many
others.
should have. Yeah, some were, but honestly, that was a really cool thing. And nowadays you can't do that because, like, if I go into that Miiverse, it's dead, no one's there. But that, I think, was probably my favorite thing about it, was like, hey, how people helped each other out when they got stuck, which was cool. But yes, I think we've talked a lot about Miiverse in the past, and I'm sure we'll return to discuss it eventually. But RIP Miiverse, you died too young. Should have continued and done some other stuff, but I'm sure we'll see something of its like again, even if it's not the exact same. So moving on then, let's talk about this Nindies showcase, which had a ton of games as a part of it. A lot of them were like not necessarily exclusive, and I think afterwards there were some people who were like, hey, we're not actually only on Switch day one, we're also on PS4 and Xbox One. Which, for Nintendo is a bit bad communication going on there. But, this is video game companies in 2017. Did you watch Microsoft's E3 press conference? Because Jesus Christ, the word exclusive was thrown around like haphazardly as hell in that thing. It's these days it's just a fucking mess. Like, console first launch exclusive, but it's also on PC on Steam day one. Don't tell anyone, please. Like, this shit is just rampant. So I'm not surprised that Nintendo is just pulling the same shit. Nintendo usually ahead of the pack, but sometimes they're just in the ditch with every other AAA publisher with a bunch of bollocks. Anyway, let's not talk about the politicking of the behind-the-scenes industry nonsense. Let's talk about the video games, because that's what we care about. Let's start off with Super Meat Boy Forever, which was teased the day before by Team Meat, and this has been announced for a very long time. I think this is the first time they've been like, hey, it's coming out at this point, at this date. But this is not the same as the original Super Meat Boy in terms of the style of game. And they've made that clear for...
It's more like level-based or runner-based.
No, so it is level-based, but it's more of a runner in the style of the Bit Trip series than it is a platforming experience like it was before. Yeah. And in this sense, there were some Meat Boy levels that kind of had that stuff tied into it because speed was necessary, otherwise you would die. But this is much more explicitly, hey, this is a game that has to be played on mobile devices as well as on big boy consoles, so they kind of had to scale it back in that sense. So it is, the running is controlled, but I'm sure there's going to be a bunch of really tough platforming.
Even though the original Meat Boy is still coming.
Yes, so the original Meat Boy will actually be out on Switch, they said, before this comes out, and that'll be this year, I think. So we'll get actual Meat Boy, which you will have to play, Bally, on pain of death.
I'll play it. I must admit, I don't like the whole concept of Meat Boy, Like, why? A slab of meat and just like the blood and the chainsaws, it's all a bit like, ugh,
Yeah, as sure as a concept, I think it's so cartoony that it never bothers me, like it. Yeah, it's never.
I just ask why. Just why?
I don't know. It's unique, like why is Star Fox a fox? Because it stands out, right? Like, he could have been a man, but he wasn't. And I think game developers like to just do weird things. And boy, there was a lot of weird in this presentation. We'll get to it. But boy, there's a lot of fucking weird games coming out. But I don't know. Super Meat Boy Forever for me it doesn't really stand out to me because I like Meat Boy for the tight platforming precision, and this will have that, but it's not going to be the same. And I'll wait for reviews and see what people say about it, but I'm sure it's going to be great. I'm not a big fan of the art style. It's it's much thicker lines and more chunky than the more kind of 8-bit style of the original Meatboy. So it's more, I don't know, clean, and in a sense I don't like the cleanness, so that's something that has not really stood out to me, but we'll see how it goes. I'll keep an eye on it for sure. Next up, let's talk about Kentucky Route Zero TV edition. We're not really going in order here. We have a list assembled. We're kind of just going down it. So this is a game that came out originally like 2014, maybe 2013. I've been hearing people talk about it for years and years because it's an episodic game, but the episodes have been coming out very slowly. So there have been 5 episodes, and the last one is going to come out, I think, around the same time that this edition launches. And it's very much like a kind of narrative adventure game in the style of, a Telltale thing, or, Until Dawn, or, those kind of experiences where, you're kind of interacting, even To the Moon actually is very much like that. So I've been interested in it for a while. I actually own it on Twitch's platform because everyone has a fucking PC platform these days. I got it as part of Twitch Prime as a free game, so I actually own this. I'll probably play it on there, but Switch seems like a good place because it's a story game you can have in your hand, which is nice. It's probably something you'd be interested in eventually, Bally. It's cool.
I'll see some reviews, see what people say, but I'm always looking for new stuff on Switch.
Yeah, it got very positive reception the first 4 episodes, so I'm sure it will end well and people like that. Then very imminently is Steamworld Dig 2, which is coming way sooner than I thought it was going to be. It's this
21st.
month. Yeah, September 21st.
It's a bit close to Metroid. That's going to hurt.
It's like a week after Metroid, yeah. So I don't know if I'm going to be day one on this. I've always said in the past I'm a fan of the SteamWorld games. I like them quite a bit. They've never been like my top tier of like indie games out there. No. But I enjoy playing them. I'll definitely play this at some point. I'll get to it. It's going to be good. Looks great. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, I agree. I'm going to play it at some point.
Yeah. Next up, Battle Chef Brigade, which is a game that's been out for a while on PC, I believe. I think there was an unfinished on Giant Bomb a while ago that I watched some of. Seems a very weird game. It's kind of this mix of match 3 cooking minigame stuff with action brawling, and you have to go out and collect ingredients and then come back and cook them. Again, talking about weird games, this is a very strange mashup. I'm not the biggest fan of the art style, but it looks curious, I think
if there were 2 words to describe this presentation, it would be art style. Like the number of art styles thrown at us was just insane.
There's a lot of diversity. And talking about hand-drawn stuff, let's move on to Floorkids, which is a rhythm game that actually has some other stuff going on, which I don't actually know what the other stuff is. I have no idea how this game plays whatsoever. Just watching the trailer didn't give me any sense of what you're actually doing.
Yeah, it didn't seem like there was... It's a bit weird.
Yeah. It's a very minimalist art style. It looks pretty cool, but until I know what that game actually is, I can't really get interested, So that's the thing. Next up, Wolverblade, which I heard Tim Geddes say that anything which feels like a kind of Flash animation style just puts him off completely. And this tended to feel like that somewhat, like it has that very, classic 2000s internet, like Flash animation look to it. It's a brawler.
Swords and Soldiers actually had that sort of style of animation. I didn't say it at the time, but it's a way you could describe it.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's fine, but I don't know. This game seems like it's a brawler. I don't know. I'm not super into brawlers, but looks neat. Seems like something that some people would be interested in, and a lot of these games seem like they're having, co-op and Joy-Con stuff going on, so that's good stuff. I can imagine that would be fun on a lunch break, just a couple of people with their Switches playing it. Seems cool. Next up is Polybridge, which is a game that, again, a lot of these games I know because I've seen Giant Bomb do unfinished or quick looks of them, because a lot of these games are games that have only ever been on Steam, and now they're coming to a console platform, and it seems like Switch is that console platform, which is cool. Like, I really like the idea that a lot of these kind of PC-only games are finally getting a platform, and Switch is a good place to put them. because of just portability and everything. And this is a really wacky game. Vinny had some crazy fucking shit where he tried to rig a bridge and it just turned into a goddamn mess because it's all very physicsy, and if you haven't designed the bridge properly, it all falls apart and just becomes a nightmare.
World of Goo.
I don't actually know what World of Goo is like because I've never actually played it.
I believe it was like creating structures, and it's like a puzzler where you're creating bridges and it's linking dots and that sort of thing.
Yeah,
it looks similar-ish.
I think they are kind of similar. This game is more about like, okay, you have to get this vehicle from one side of this thing to the other, build a bridge to do it, and you can be as creative or crazy with it as you want. Yeah. But likely it'll be a nightmare if you get a bit too crazy. So yeah, that looks neat. I don't know. It's not really the kind of game that I go in for, but great that it's coming. Earth Atlantis was another one that looked pretty interesting. It was kind of just a standard shooter, like side-scrolling shooter, where
nice
you have a lot of
that drawn black and white.
Yeah, reminds me of Gum and Clive a little bit.
Yes, very good. Good point.
Yeah, and I like that aesthetic. It doesn't have quite as much color. It seems a bit more just pencil drawing going on there. But yeah, a lot of just like, hey, you can attack from multiple sides of this ship. It seems like bullets go out of everywhere instead of just in front or just behind you. So that seems like a nice twist on the idea. Then next up was Mulaka, which, Bally, you have something interesting to say about.
Yeah, so for all the expert runners out there, you might have heard of the Tarahumara tribe, which is like this tribe it's right in the middle of like the Mexican rainforest, like some canyon. They're very hard to get to, and there's like tons of like drug smugglers all around them, but basically a runner who's very interested in them because running is such a huge part of their culture, sort of embedded himself with them for a time and wrote a book about it, and the book is called Born to Run, and it's talking about how we as humans are designed for long distance running. It's very interesting. I'd highly recommend it. And I was just really shocked that the Tarahumara tribe now have their own video game, which is just interesting and pretty awesome. And I was just really shocked that it was actually that tribe and not some other tribe I was thinking of. But yeah, really cool.
Yeah, got your knowledge there to help us out and figure out all that stuff. But the game itself, I'm not super sold on it. It doesn't seem like my sort of thing. The art style is
a little bit too niche for its own good almost. It's kind of jarring.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the main hook is going to be involving it, but we'll keep an eye.
It felt like there were like some really big bosses and sort of in a 3D person space to like fight those bosses, but you didn't really actually see him fighting them. It was just kind of running around them. So it feels like this game might be out in quite a while, although it is supposed to be some point 2018. So
yeah, I think a lot of these games are going to be 2018 stuff, so that's fine. There's lots of stuff coming, so don't want to stuff it all in, especially at the end of this year, which is going to be packed as hell. Next up is probably the game where I would say this is a game that I didn't know about before this presentation, and after it's probably the one that I'm most interested in.
Right.
It's called Yono and the Celestial Elephants. It basically looks like Zelda, but you're this cute elephant.
Oh, it's so cute.
I'm sold. It's Zelda with a cute elephant.
I showed Caroline this trailer and she just loved it. Like, having played with Zelda, she was like, that looks cool. I was like, yeah, I want to get this as well.
Absolutely. So it looks really cool. I believe it's, I think all of these are going to be at PAX West, so a lot of people are going to be playing them there. So I'm interested to read about what people say regarding this game and see if it holds up to that trailer, because that was pretty cool.
Really cool.
The next game is probably the weirdest fucking thing in this entire presentation. A game with a hell of a name, Morphies Law. Kind of maybe taking a cue from Splatoon in terms of, hey, this is a creative, different type of shooter from what we usually see, where essentially you gain or lose mass depending on the body parts that you shoot of your opponents.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but like, I know Morphies Law is a play on the words of Murphy's Law,
Right.
Murphy's Law, I believe, having just watched Interstellar, where they talk about it all the time. I don't know if you've seen that film.
I fucking love Interstellar. Yes,
Okay, I just saw it on the plane on the way to Japan. On the way back.
Oh, Bally, that's the worst way to see that film. I saw that film in like a massive cinema with a bunch of like crazy shit. It was amazing. Anyway,
I
love Interstellar.
Am I right in saying Murphy's Law is that if something can happen, it will happen?
Yeah, because I had a friend at school whose second name was Murphy, and so we talked about Murphy's Law a lot. But yes, if something can go wrong, it will go wrong. Is the phrase.
Fair
enough. And I guess the thing going wrong is fuck. I'm losing my body, and now I'm a tiny, short, stubby guy. So
of course,
there you go. It's interesting. I don't know. The main concept is like, you have these two titans on the map, and like the person whose titan falls down the shortest loses, essentially. So yeah, interesting. There's lots of stuff in terms of like going through doors where if you're too big you can't fit through, whereas a small person can. But it seems like a very unique idea. Honestly, I think in execution it seems a little janky. It definitely looks like a Steam game to me. And we'll see how it shows. But
the basic mechanic is that you shoot their head, and by shooting their head becomes bigger and yours becomes smaller, making the hitbox on their head bigger and the hitbox on your head smaller.
I think either that or the opposite. I'm not
sure.
No,
I listened to a podcast who claimed that this was it.
Well, sometimes podcasts are wrong, Bally, as we've proven in the past. Sometimes we make claims on here that you've got from other sources that they're not correct. Anyway, then we had Sausage Sports Club, which kind of looks like Gang Beasts, except you're like sausage dogs. Seems fun. I don't know. That seems like a dumb game you'd play.
You can control the neck with the Joy-Con.
Mm-hmm.
Like you could twist it apparently or something.
Wait, really? That's actual thing you do?
Yes, it was actually said in the presentation. Like, twist the Joy-Con to rotate your neck.
Okay,
there we go.
All right, sure.
You heard it here first.
Light Fingers looked pretty cool from the very little I saw of it, but it seems like very touchscreen based. And you're kind of manipulating this board to like move things around, and I don't know, it just had a nice art style to it. It looked interesting. It talked about it like it was kind of a board game. As someone who likes board games, Bally, did this pique your interest at all?
I'm really struggling to remember this one. I don't know. It's not sticking with me at all. I don't really have an opinion.
Okay, well, it looked neat, so anyway. They also showed 9 Parchments from Frozen Byte, which they're the people who did the Trine series. Kind of like a co-op action game with like magic spells. It's not really sticking out to me. As someone who's a big fan of Trine, it's not really doing too much.
We saw it a bit last year at Gamescom, although we didn't play it.
Yeah, people were playing it there. I just wasn't interested. It's not really my kind of game. And the big one that we're both excited about is Bit Trip Runner 3, which this wasn't actually shown in the presentation, but there were some trailers that came out that on Nintendo's YouTube channel that of other games that are going to be at PAX.
Probably my most hyped game from this whole list.
Yeah, 100%. I'm with you on that. It looks so damn good. I am very excited about the successor to the excellent Bit Trip 2, which was just so much fun. Let's get back to stuff that was actually in the presentation, though. One was called Mom Hid My Game, which was really fucking weird. It's got such
a mobile port, apparently.
Yeah, and it seems like it because it's very touchscreen interactive. Yeah. And it's an art style that completely does not appeal to me in any way.
Nope,
like I
agree.
Fucking despise the look of that game.
Oh, yeah.
And I get what it's going for, but I just do not. I can't connect it with it on any level. On that alone.
Yeah, I'm not digging this game at all. Don't get it. Don't want it.
Yeah. Let's speed through these because there are some stuff that we don't really care about. Next up, Hero seemed like a kind of action style game. Dragon Marked for Death was a new game from Inti Create, which looks like a kind of side-scrolling action beat 'em up. So those two, they seem fine. I wasn't really piqued my interest by either of them. But then we also have Golf Story, which is coming out in September.
Ooh. And
looks like the actual spiritual successor to the Mario sports games.
Yes, I'm interested. I want to play this game. This might be other than, the Mario Odyssey, Metroid, potentially like Rocket League coming out, this might be another Switch game I pick up before the end of the year. Like
this might be a box boy situation where you go out for a run, you come back, you're like, I just want to play this game, I'm going to get it.
I'm just going to get it and buy it and
I'm just gonna
play 6 hours of it before I tell him
It's very rare that happens, but when it does, I'm like, oh, Bally did that? Oh, that's weird.
Bally did a thing that was unexpected and was weird. I might do that with this game. It looks cool. I want to see a few reviews, so I might not be day one, but we'll see.
Yeah, I love the style of it. It just looked so good. And I think finally there might be some stuff we've missed here because there was some stuff that was just YouTube trailers and not actually in the presentation. But they showed off the first footage of King Knight's campaign from Shovel Knight. It's called Shovel Knight King of Cards. It looks fantastic. As always, Yacht Club just outdo themselves every time. They put way more work into this stuff than anyone expects from them and just nail it every time. So absolutely looking forward to playing that in early 2018. That was pretty much the indie roundup. I would say generally this presentation was not as strong for me personally and my taste in games as the first one that we had in February. But it really starts to show how much diversity Nintendo are getting in their indie lineup and how many developers that ordinarily on Wii U wouldn't have put their games out because it was a dying system, are on board and just want to use this device and have their game on this device. Yeah.
And of course, there's one more game that you've not mentioned yet.
You're right, Bally, because we skipped over it deliberately. I don't even really think about it in that way because... it was a big, as an indie game, because it was a big old AAA, not really AAA, I would say a kind of AA game on the Wii.
AA, good phrase.
No More Heroes is back, Bally. Holy fucking shit. I know you have zero connection to No More Heroes.
I don't even know what you do in this game. I just know about laser katanas and that's about it.
Yeah, Travis Touchdown has basically a lightsaber. You should play this game, Bally. You basically use a fucking lightsaber in No More Heroes. Come on.
Then. Let me borrow it. I'll give it a go.
It's basically the best Star Wars game. Is what I'm saying, all right? Like, come on.
If you say so.
No More Heroes is a very cool series. I've played the first game. I loved it. I think it's so cool in terms of we don't get enough games and we don't get enough developers who are brave enough to be like, this is just boss fights the game. And there is like other stuff in it where you have to fight through some minions to get to them every time, and there's an open world which has nothing in it and is so bare bones. But No More Heroes is basically boss fights the game, and the second one is even more doubling down on that, which I need to get to. I've had it for years sitting in a closet, and I need to play that on Wii get ready for this. Now's your chance. Because, Travis Strikes Again, No More Heroes is coming to the Nintendo Switch. And people are a little bit worried when it got announced because they're like, oh, is it actually going to be a No More Heroes game in the same style of like the action game originals? And it is going to be, because people thought like, oh, is this just like a weird indie minigame collection? Because the concept is that Travis and this guy whose daughter he killed in the first game gets sucked into this video game machine, and they have to play through different worlds from other video games. And there was Hotline Miami that got shown in the trailer. Yacht Club have also confirmed, I think this was at the Nindies at Night event, that Shovel Knight is also going to be in this game, which is very exciting.
Wow.
So there's going to be some crazy crossovers with different indie titles, and as long as it plays like the originals and it has that same Suda51 style, I'm fucking in. I want to play this because that game is super unique, and it was the kind of game on Wii that was very a-traditional for a Nintendo system, yet it was pretty much exclusive until it went to Sony for PlayStation Move at one point. But No More Heroes is basically a Nintendo series, so it's cool to see Suda coming back. This is the first game he's directed in a long time as well, and I'm excited. I think the trailer shows not much because it's not really gameplay, but I really want to see what's happening with this game. And I need to lend you the original No More Heroes at some point, Bally.
Definitely keen to give it a go.
It's a really interesting game that I enjoyed quite a bit. So, I think that's it. Bally, overall, how did you feel about this presentation?
Very good. I agree with you. I preferred more of the games in the one earlier in the year, for sure. Stuff like Rocket League is easily like number one, top of the list for me. But, seeing stuff like King Knight being just really solid and just games out of nowhere that really interest me, like, what's the elephant?
Yono.
I'm just going to say Zelda Elephant from now on. So you had Zelda Elephant and like you had the golf game. Like those two just looked so great and really interesting things that I just knew nothing about that now I'm really keen to give a go and play.
Yeah, absolutely. It just continues to show the Switch's momentum. Even if the big AAA publishers haven't caught on yet because they all thought, hey, it's a new Nintendo machine, we shouldn't bother. These indies are benefiting right now because aside from Nintendo games, they're the main, stuff on the platform that people are buying.
If until the end of the Switch's life cycle, it's only going to be Nintendo AAAs and indies. I know that might not mean that the Switch is a very successful system, but on a personal level, I am completely sorted.
Absolutely, and I think we've both talked about in the past how, quite honestly, the traditional AAA game industry does not appeal to us in any way. Like, the biggest games in the world right now are things like Destiny, which, let me tell you, I played half an hour of the Destiny 2 beta on PC.
Did it blow your mind?
That game looks really nice and runs excellently on PC. The shooting feels good. Also, it bored me to fucking tears. Like, there is nothing interesting about that game whatsoever to me. Yeah, it's like the most generic. Look, there are fans of Destiny out there. I get it. Not for me whatsoever.
I don't think many of them listen to this podcast, but fair enough.
Probably not, no. I'm sure there are some, but God, it fucking bored me to tears. Anyway, so I think that, like, for us, this is a really great slate of stuff.
I want to play bloody Zelda Elephant any day. I don't want Destiny.
Exactly.
That's my bread and butter. That's unique, interesting stuff that I can even play on the go and play on my big screen at home. Perfect.
Absolutely. So that's going to wrap up this segment, and it will also close out the show. Let's talk about where you can find us and what we can do to help you every day of our lives. You can find me on Twitter. I'm at Lordnbz. Bally, where can people find you?
I am at Ballyman91. That's BALLYMAN91. And you can also follow the podcast Twitter account, which is at TNL Podcast. That's at TNL Podcast. And as MBZ mentioned at the top of the show, just check out the pinned tweet on that Twitter account, and you can jump straight into our Discord server, I should say, which a bunch of you have joined in. We've had some really great chats already. So yeah, come and join us. It's all happening.
Yeah, it would be great to have a bunch of people in there, and it's a fun time. So go look at that and please join. You can also email us at our email address if you want to send us things. And with episode 100 coming up next time, you may want to tell us stuff about, like, what did you like about the show? Why did you listen to the show? Stuff like that. So if you have any thoughts on...
When did you start listening to this show that's been going for almost 4 years?
Oh, God, yeah. Jesus. The weird realization I'm having is, like, when I started listening to RFN, they were only, like... That current crew was only like 2 or 3 years into their own run, which is really weird to me right now, having done this for this long. Yeah. Wow. So in any case, yes, do send those emails. Where can they be sent to, Bally?
Please send your emails to ThisNintendoLife@gmail.com. That is ThisNintendoLife@gmail.com. We would really appreciate them.
And speaking of episode 100, we're planning to return to our top 50 games of all time list, which is going to require a bunch of shuffling. We have to move some things about. For one thing, we have to get rid of F-Zero on any list. It has to die. So that's happening. No, of course, this is going to be fun. We had a great time doing it last time, and hopefully it won't be as tense, but it probably will get tense at points.
We've played a ton of games in the last 50 episodes worth, so it's going to look like a very different list between the start of the episode and the end of the episode. But yeah, it should be fun and hopefully not overly controversial. But I think there's a lot of great stuff that's come out that we can agree on and push right up to near the top of that list.
Yeah, most things when it comes to lists are controversial, Bally, so I don't think we can avoid it. It is the inevitability of any list.
We are on the internet, therefore we have to do lists. That's the rules.
Yes, very, very true. We must do lists. It's the sacred rule of the internet. And yeah, you can find us in various places online. We are on iTunes, we're on Stitcher, we are on YouTube, our YouTube channel, youtube.com/ThisNintendoLife. we haven't done like all the stuff we were doing before on our YouTube channel. I've just been busy doing a lot of things, but the podcast does go up every Friday there, so or every other Friday, I should say. So it's still a place to get that, and we're thinking about what we can do to hopefully get some more stuff up there in the future. So yeah, stay tuned for that stuff. And yeah, leave us a review on iTunes if possible. Really helps us with exposure, gets the show out to more listeners, more people. And yeah, a lot of people have written some very nice reviews, and if you do write one, we'll probably read it on the show. So there's some incentive for you to get your words out of our own mouth.
NBZ, this is us finally signing off in double digits for the last time ever.
Oh my god, you're right. It's the last double digit episode. Since episode 10, we have been in double digits, and it finally has to come to an end. But onwards and upwards, as they say.
Until episode 1000, this is us.
Yes, until episode 1000 in 47 years' time. Yes, absolutely. So thank you, everyone, as always, for listening. You're the reason we do this. If you weren't there, then it would just be me and Bally shouting at each other, which is fun, granted. But thank you all.
But you guys make the shouting at each other way more fun.
Absolutely. So until next time, thank you all, and we'll see you again very soon. Goodbye, everyone. The musical interludes from today's episode were Rabbid Kong's theme from Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle, copyright Ubisoft 2017, and Lava Reef Zone Act 1 from Sonic Mania, copyright Sega 2017. You know what I forgot to say?
What?
Fucking Mario versus Donkey Kong. What a piece of shit. What a piece of shit game. Oh my god. I can't believe you did the secret world in that game. Fucking
I
made my blood boil. I fucking hate that game so much.
I liked it.
It sucks ass. It's so bad.
It's got some bits, ground your gears more than me.
Fucking hate that game.